All right, so I'm here with my new friend Mike, friend of a friend, Greg. You might remember from the other podcast. I met you while we were valeting, which is also how I met Greg. And I got a lot. The whole premise of the show is that I was very much a straight and narrow type of kid growing up, and that has its own advantages in that I avoided a lot of problems in my life.
Yeah.
But I have another friend who reminds me a lot of you, actually, who kind of went off that path and kind of was living the thug life for a while. And he came back around, and I noticed he has a lot of wisdom that I lack, and I think it's because I failed to be bad when I should have been, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of want to dig into that a little bit with you, like the things you learned from being bad, and if it's possible for someone like me to kind of go from the side and pull a little of that wisdom without having to go through all the trouble.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So okay, one thing that stood out with you is very superficial, but you're the only person I've ever seen wear a grill like with any credibility.
Yeah.
like what's with it?
Just it's something I've always done. Something I've always wanted to do. Like my teeth messed up underneath and got insurance and all that. Eventually it's all gonna be permanent. All of my teeth.
The gold?
All of it's gonna be silver, top and bottom, front.
Mm-hmm.
All the teeth. Yeah. So it's just temporary, but
yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point of contrast, because like, dude, I mean, I'm a suburban middle class kid. I could never wear that, and I wouldn't. So like, this is in a sense like my own equivalent. Like, I think when most people see a beret, they think like artistic, pretentious, whatever. I don't mind taking on those associations. I love having a beret, and I love having my little Icarus pin right there.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also indicative, like, I'm all in my head. I think too much, I read too much, and I don't get out there and live enough and just bite down like maybe you've done more in your life.
Yeah.
Like, what? Okay, is there a place you usually start when you introduce yourself?
No, just Mike. This is Mike Moreno.
Mike Moreno.
Yes, sir.
Do you speak Spanish at all?
Nah, I actually failed Spanish 4 years in school. 4 years in a row. It's probably for lack of going to class, but yeah, I mean, I can get around a little bit, but it's far from fluent.
What about your parents?
My mom did, my pops didn't. Mm-hmm. I think he can kind of understand a little bit, but I've never heard him speaking.
Okay.
His mom does. All my grandparents do, but yeah, it's just kind of faded.
Yeah. So that's one thing we do have in common. Like, we both grew up here, obviously. I don't know how far back your immigration story goes, but both my parents are immigrants, and I ended up losing my Spanish for a while, but then I kind of relearned it. Nice. And part of it was doing like valet type jobs where there were a lot of Mexicans, a lot of immigrants.
Yeah.
Another thing we have in common is we both have army dads.
Yeah.
You want to tell me a little bit about him?
Oh yeah, he's a badass. Yeah. His name's Tim.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in the military. He retired from the military, switched from the Army to the Air Force. His wife, same. They're both badasses. They're both military gun hosts. She's almost about to retire as well.
Really?
Yeah. They met overseas. But yeah, he's that guy.
Mm. You told me that you would have to do like so many push-ups every morning before you were able to do anything else.
Yeah. There'd be days he'd get up, flip me out of bed, whatever. Got to do push-ups, sit-ups, run. Then get home from school, do the same thing.
Yeah, my dad was oddly and inconsistently very strict with me too. Although he never was like the push-ups guy. He was just, I don't know, had a mania about discipline. But for me, that made me very timid and afraid.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that made you like want to rebel?
To an extent, I guess. Yeah. I guess I took like all of that, the bad parts, when I was younger is what I noticed. I noticed, him just being, because he was a drill sergeant as well. So it's not just like anybody in the military. There's certain people that do certain jobs in the military that don't really need that toughness in them or that fight in them. But being a drill sergeant, you gotta be in people's faces and always yelling and this and that. So that on top of him being gone, always deployed and stuff. I think I took like the military like I didn't like it growing up. But then to turn around and then join, that's kind of what I was hoping would bring us together when I joined and stuff.
Did it?
Yeah, it did until I fucked it up. Then it kind of, but I mean, he's, before that, yeah, it was a while. We went a little bit without talking. That's when I went off and veered off and started doing my thing in the streets.
So I have I took some 5 bullet points of your biography, so much as that I was able to piece together from that one conversation we had.
Mm-hmm.
My impression was that you were living the street life in your late teens, but you're saying you kind of had another period where you were thugging.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So I wasn't really too hard in the streets, but growing up, I did go to school. I did do that shit. But yeah, I mean, in middle grade and middle school and shit like that, you get introduced to, that's when people around here start banging and start fighting. Before then, we was already around, gang banging and all that. In the neighborhood I grew up in, you grow up, you start getting pushed into what gangs you're gonna be in and that type shit. But started in middle school, started kind of experimenting with what's out here, let's really see what the shit's about. And then I guess around 14 or 15 is when was really started getting out here.
And then for a square like me, what does that mean?
Dealing, I mean, running around, causing shit, looking for the trouble, looking for people that ain't from where I'm from and where the fuck you from. You know what I'm saying? That'd be just right there. Shit, you ain't from where I'm from, then it's on.
No, someone like you wouldn't have done that to someone like me. I'm imagining, because I don't look like street.
Nah, not really.
I don't even know what the terminology is. But
yeah.
Do you look for a dude who's, I don't know, more thuggish or whatever?
Yeah. You kind of, it's not really written rules and shit like that. I mean, there are written rules to a certain extent, but it's you ain't catching no points by going around picking on somebody who he ain't about the life. So
okay.
It's, and then but then again, if you do catch somebody who don't really look that role, but you catch them walking down a certain block that that block's hot and shit, and then you gotta, hey, what's up? What you doing?
I remember in 2011, back when Occupy Wall Street was a thing, we had this. Do you remember what all that was?
Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah, it was this protest movement against economic injustice and all that. But we had this encampment in the middle of West Tampa, which was the ghetto there, and it was mostly white people, some black people, but that demographic was they weren't from there. They were protesters. They were maybe educated or maybe just had higher aspirations, but they weren't of that world, and nobody really fucked with us. Even when I went just by myself walking down the street, I obviously was not from the neighborhood, so
yeah.
I guess I benefited from just being so not of that
a little
world.
Different. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's for sure though. You see somebody, I mean, that's just not, I mean, you'll find that collective group of just every different diversity, every classification in schools. And same thing ran in schools, me and my friends, or people call them friends back then, later on you find out ain't nobody your friend, but you see that you got this group of people, is banging or whatever about the streets and shit, and then you see that group over there who's studying and shit. You ain't gonna just, you can let them study. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. One thing I noticed about you and my friend Gustavo is that there's more hard lines, and as vague as it sounds, like what's what. Like I feel like even until like my later 20s, dude, like I just didn't know which way was up, just because I was disconnected from like real consequences, because I wasn't like getting in trouble as far as crime. I wasn't even like chasing women, and I feel like that would have made me grow up a lot more too. Knowing things like just your value relative to this woman, having to compete with other guys for a limited pool of women, like even that would have made me a bit more conscious about the facts of life. And I feel like you and my friend Gustavo are even more like know more the shape of the world, and like, okay, you can't do this because of this and that guy isn't really your friend. I mean, you're cool now, but you know, when this series of circumstances unfold, it's like that loyalty doesn't extend past this point.
Oh yeah.
Like I feel like you've just explored more of the world, and you know more what's out there, and so you don't go past certain lines. I'm being really vague, but am I describing that well?
No, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So
I mean,
disciplined by life.
yeah, for sure.
So can you give me an example of something that, like, let's say I was your younger brother.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are, but I imagine we're about the same age.
Yeah.
And I'm like Mr. Work hard and study at 18 years old. But you can see I need a little guidance because I'm a little too naive. Like, what's one thing you would pass on to your little bro there?
Well, I mean, that's speaking to real life right there. I got my little brother Nico. He ain't 18 yet, but he's a teen. He's getting, he's got a good head on his shoulders. But just like he's saying, he didn't have to go experience all this shit and all this and that. So it's like the type of advice I give to people, to younger people all the time, is just, just always watch people, always be aware. Be aware of your surroundings, and I mean that in every aspect, where these people are geographically, where they are in life, where their headspace is. You can find out a lot about people without saying anything, watching body gestures and watching the way they move. So.
Okay, so what was your impression of me? You don't have to get too specific if it's like uncomfortable, but this may be the third time we've ever hung out.
Yeah.
And that's mostly because of our mutual friend Greg.
Right.
But like, when the first time you saw me, like, how did you size me up? As
So I kind of cheated because Greg told me about you prior to us meeting. So I knew you was into like a more politically sound than most people, paying attention to the laws and movements of things. But when I saw you face to face, I could tell you came from a military family by the way you was standing. Most people, like with the beret and stuff, you wear the beret and the way you just were standing. A lot of people don't just stand at ease without, nobody knows what at ease is, or just the way your foot stance and stuff. It's kind of that kind of something you pick up from people you watch in the military. That's around the military. So I kind of figured that. I wasn't sure. I never asked, but.
Yeah, dude, I really grew up in that culture. Like, my dad was in the Army for like 23 years, and then my sister, and I was, for most of my life, thinking I was going to be in the military too. I was in ROTC in high school. So that culture really, really influenced me.
Yeah, so I guess I was correct in assuming that part. But
You
I mean, you seem cool. Like you said, I could tell you ain't walked the line I've walked, but that's not, I don't really like running into people that the line that I walk, because most of the time it's like, hey, I remember you. Shit, where you remember me from,
Yeah. So, here's another example of like sizing somebody up. You told me a story where you were chilling at your place, or maybe you just come in and your girl's relative or some acquaintance of hers was going through your things in your room.
Yeah.
Now, if I had walked in that situation, there would have been a certain unsureness in me, like, well, maybe I should look at this in the most generous terms possible. Maybe he got lost,
Yeah.
But why don't you explain that situation?
So yeah, it was just an unfortunate relative having a hard time, and was in the house and walked in and saw him going through some stuff. So I was like, hey, what the fuck you doing,
But
This
you knew what
person,
he was doing.
But yeah, this person is known to be on drugs and this and that, so it ain't no second guess in my mind. I mean, even still, even if it was somebody that I've known was never to be on drugs or something like, never to be on drugs or in a bad spot, what are you doing going through somebody's stuff, So that kind of, I'm going to be aggressive right off rip. What the fuck is going on? What you doing?
Now, this guy, he said he was a big dude, and now here's another thing that would have made me unsure, and this is not manly of me, but I'm trying to correct that, and that's part of the purpose of the podcast. One, you said this dude was bigger than you. Two, he's a relative, or what? A relative?
Yeah, her relative, yeah.
So there's like kind of a political equation, you might say, because you don't want to maybe offend this relative, and maybe they'll say, oh, you should be taking it easy on him. He's going through a hard time, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But you say you really didn't have that. That's those secondary sort of thoughts.
No, not at all. Cause I mean, like all the girls I've ever had, they kind of know, how I am, and they know if I'm taking action needs to be took. I'm not somebody that's just gonna yell and hoot and holler for no reason. If I get in that mode is justified. So, like I said, it wouldn't matter if this person was in the best state ever in their head and in life and whatever. I come in to my spot and you're going through my stuff, you got some answering to do.
So what was his answer?
Honestly, I don't even remember. I don't even remember exactly what he said. It's just after that, it was just get the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? You need to get the fuck out. Like then and there. He tried to oppose it. We got into a little bit of a scuffle. Yeah.
What was that scuffle?
He lost. He lost.
I mean, just right then, it was like he didn't want to leave or own up to it, so you got in a fight there. Or you say, let's step outside, or what?
Yeah, no, it's always, I don't really like wrecking people's, it's no point in fighting inside, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just, I've just always been taught to, hey, let's take it outside, let's go outside.
A gentleman.
Yeah, whatever, let's go outside, let's handle it outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like just out here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what, you say he used to be a boxer?
Yeah.
You're a boxer?
Yeah.
You knock him out?
Yeah.
Okay. What after that?
None. Left him.
He just walked it off?
Yeah, I mean, no, he, I don't really like, that's when the family shit kicks in. It's like, damn, I can't just really, just straight leave him here type shit, gotta keep an eye, make sure he ain't hit his head on the concrete, and he ain't dead really,
Yeah.
So you just kind of check him, hey, you good, whatever. If there's any kind of movement, all right. Then I'm done, you know what I'm saying? You got what you need, and don't come back in here.
And he didn't come back?
No.
What did your family have to say?
None.
They knew he was kind of a piece of shit?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, dude, I mean, I think that's the kind of life. See, when you're the kind of person that you are, like I said, I would have had these secondary and tertiary and all these tree of consequences coming out. Should I do this? And I feel like when you're the sort of person that you are, it's one, those calculations don't go that far out. I mean, and they probably don't need to.
Well, they didn't at all. No.
And I don't know, I guess maybe your family kind of knows that's the way you are, and there's no point in trying to argue and say you shouldn't have done and this or that. Or was there some of that?
Nah, well, none of that, because, like I said, once I take that action, it's justified, but it's, but you're very right, though. My mind don't work that way. I'm unfortunately the type of guy that I'm going to act, and then I'm going to deal with whatever comes with it.
Okay.
Instead of, I'm barely learning, well, I mean, in some situations, I'm able to be like, okay, if I do this shit right here, what's the consequences of this? What am I have to deal with afterwards? But And once my adrenaline gets going, I'm one of them people who I get in that mode, I black out and I do what I gotta do. And whenever I come to, then it's like, well, shit, all right. Yeah.
Okay. I was watching this podcast once, and they were interviewing this guy who was one of the early small-time cocaine importers in the 80s. And the interview asked him, do you ever, like, feel bad about all the negative effects that cocaine you brought in might have had? And he's like, well, no, I never really thought of that.
Yeah.
It's funny, like a real polite, like, southern white dude.
Yeah.
And, you know, I also thought, like, that same ability to act without fear or, I don't know, too much calculation also makes it so that guy ended up spending like 2/3 of his life in prison because he didn't think a few steps ahead.
Yeah.
Like, what's the negative part to not thinking too far ahead? Like for you?
Right now, shit, like, I mean, yeah, I'm on probation for some shit I shouldn't have done, you know, let my temper get the best of me. I'm on probation. I mean, I got a lot of legal shit I went through. Greg helped me out a lot, you know, in the past, getting me out of jail. Like, it's just always been, for me, most of the time, most of those situations just end up, you know, I go to jail, I get some legal shit, you know, and there's other things that have happened. But, I mean, this type of shit, just ain't no point in going back and even thinking about it, because it's done, it's done.
So, if I was trying to be more like you and thinking less and more decisive, like, if you had to put it in one sentence, what would your advice to someone like me be who thinks too much?
Act.
That's it.